The alien council mocked. The Deathworld girl thinks she's a warrior. She corrected, I don't think, I know. The observation pod hummed. The human was already smaller than her file suggested. Commander Thexol had run 17 intake days across his career, 17 species, each one arriving at Station Korvax with some claim on warrior status, each one eventually measured against the proving and found to contain exactly the ceiling it advertised. He had learned to read outcomes from doorways. Today he sat in his pod above the council chamber and watched the seventh seat fill on the dais below, and he did not look at the petitioner until the room's ambient noise changed. It changed because the human had walked in. She was not large. The file had said 61 kilograms. The file had been right. Thexol ran his gaze across her the way he ran it across all of them, a quick clinical sweep for mass, reinforcement, threat indicators. She had none of the usual tells. Smooth skin, no subdermal plating, binocular eyes with the whites showing at the edges, the way prey animals often had whites showing. Her uniform was clean and unremarkable. She was carrying a single bag over one shoulder, and the bag was not military spec. It was the kind of thing you took on a short trip because you expected to come back. She looked up at the dais and waited. That was the wrong detail. She did not scan the chamber. She did not register the ambassadors, the generals, the 7 faces of the Alliance Council arrayed above her. She found the center of the room and she waited, like someone who had already decided what was going to happen and was simply giving the room time to catch up. Thexol's mandibles were still. He noted this about himself. High Chancellor Morvek leaned forward in his seat, 4 eyes, blinking in the slow, amused sequence he used for things that did not require his full attention, and began. You have achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 6 solar cycles ago. He spoke with the warmth of a teacher who genuinely liked the student and was genuinely certain the student was wrong. You have no plasma shielding, no quantum weaponry, no genetic enhancement protocol. You are, by every measurable standard, a pre-military civilization that has discovered the stars before discovering what the stars contain. He paused. And you believe you can stand alongside species whose evolution has been shaped by warfare spanning millennia. The chamber did what it always did when Morvek finished an observation. It laughed, not cruel laughter, knowing laughter, the sound of a room full of beings who had seen the proving's record and knew what the record meant. General Korvax, 6 seats to the left, pressed his broad fist against the console and dented it slightly. Not malice, reflex amusement. Someone near the back made a sound that the translation matrix converted as fond disbelief. Morvek spread his hands. What is it, precisely, that you believe you bring to the arena? The human looked up at him. Myself. One word, no elaboration. She did not move. The laughter crested, peaked, and began to ebb, and she waited through all of it with the expression of someone who had queued a long time for something and was used to the queue. Thexol's mandibles clicked, once, involuntary. He closed his intake report and opened a new document. It was decided in 12 minutes. The proving would be offered. Morvek announced it with the satisfied tone of a chancellor who had just done something generous at low cost, and Thexol was assigned as evaluator. He submitted his formal objection to the assignment through the correct procedural channel. The channel logged it and approved the assignment anyway. He closed the channel. Through the communication array above the petitioner's standing position, he addressed her. Rest tonight, human. Tomorrow, the proving begins. You will need the time. She looked up at the source of the sound. She was not afraid. She was not performing fearlessness. There was simply no fear present, the way a room without furniture doesn't perform emptiness, it just has nothing in it. Thank you, Commander, she said, but I don't think rest is necessary. I've been preparing for this my whole life. He logged his prediction before she had finished the sentence. Will not survive Phase 1. Recommend immediate reassignment to diplomatic liaison track upon recovery. He closed the prediction log. He did not delete it. He never deleted predictions. I wish I could tell you the chamber stayed laughing. Stay close. Artificial dawn cycled orange and red across Training Complex 9. Thexol arrived first. He always did. For candidates he expected to break early, it was cleaner, witnessing the moment without an audience. The obstacle course lay dormant in the pre-session half-dark, its scale still visible even without full lighting. The towering first wall, the 12-meter gap, the cargo section, the acid pool channels with their drained beds, the plasma jet housings, the partial gravity corridor at the far end. He had designed this course for Krellian shock troops. 3 meters tall, 4 times human muscle density, carapace across the shoulders. It was, in purely biological terms, not a course built for a 61-kilogram organism with exposed whites to her eyes. She arrived exactly on time. Light training armor, no reinforcement beyond basic impact fabric, and no visible weapons. She looked at the course the way you looked at a map of somewhere you'd already decided to go. Powered exoskeleton rack is to your right, Thexol said. You may select any frame. She looked at the rack. 8 frames, each calibrated for non-Krellian physiology, each capable of quadrupling effective mass and force output. She shook her head. He had expected this. He had not expected the flat certainty of it, no pause, no hesitation, no moment of calculation. She shook her head the way you declined a second portion of something you hadn't enjoyed the first time. He pulled up the briefing on his command interface. 67% of proving candidates do not survive Phase 1. Of the 33% who complete it, 19% require full-body reconstruction. He let that land. The graduation rate across all species, across all recorded history of the proving, is 7%. She looked at him. I understand the statistics. And you still wish to proceed. I didn't come here to be dismissed with numbers, Commander. He looked at her for a moment. Then he activated the course lighting. The first wall lit up 6 meters of smooth alloy, no handholds, designed for a Krellian running start. Behind it, visible through the arch, the 12-meter gap over the containment field below. The Phase 2 drone record, he said, because it was part of the standard briefing, and he was precise about standard briefings, is currently held by Assault Captain Sexner, Vraxian 3rd Fleet, 40 years of active combat experience, 11 drones eliminated, time 27 minutes 51 seconds. He gestured toward the record plaque above the arena entrance CXNOR 11 27M51S, where it had sat unchanged for 9 years. Phase 2 follows Phase 1, if you reach it. She looked at the plaque. Her expression did not change. She said nothing. He noted it. There is one more item in the intake file, he said, turning back to his interface. Your world's biosphere classification. He scrolled to the relevant field. There was a redaction flag on the column, a small administrative marker, the kind that appeared when a file had been transferred between registry systems and a field hadn't propagated cleanly. He did not open it. Class 2 or Class 3, the difference was irrelevant at this level of the proving. He logged intake file, complete, and moved on. It was not complete. You may begin when ready, he said. She turned to face the wall. She rolled her shoulders once, the way you roll your shoulders before something you've done many times, not before something you're afraid of. She ran. Thexol had a failure point log. He had kept one for every candidate across 17 species because the data was useful. Knowing where species broke told him where to calibrate, what to reinforce, what to design differently. He opened Kale Voss's failure point log before she reached the first wall. She hit the wall at full speed. The angle was severe, no Krellian would hesitate at it, but a Krellian had a different relationship with vertical surfaces. She planted her feet, drove her palms flat, and hauled. The ascent was not fast. It was not smooth. It was methodical in the way that a thing done under extreme physical load can still be methodical, and she cleared the top and dropped to the far side in a controlled fall, landing in a low crouch that absorbed the impact instead of fighting it. He crossed out the first failure point entry. The 12-meter gap was next. He had run the calculation before she reached the edge. Her velocity, her mass, the jump geometry. She would come up short by approximately 2 meters. He reached for the emergency containment control, a field that would catch a falling candidate before the drop became fatal. She didn't leave the edge. She stopped at the lip, looked down, looked across, looked up. Then she looked left. There was a maintenance beam running parallel to the gap wall, a structural element for the automated repair drones, rated for their weight plus equipment, accessible from the platform edge at a slight angle. Thexol had forgotten it existed. It was not part of the course. It was background infrastructure, the same as the lighting conduits and the atmospheric venting ports. In 17 species of candidates, over 11 years of running this course, no one had noticed it. She jumped to it, swung across on one arm, let go, and cleared the gap by a full meter. His mandible clicked. Once, he closed his hand around the emergency containment control and did not press it. He opened a new document, Technique Analysis, Candidate VOS. The cargo section came next. 500 kilograms, designated positions. Physics was physics. She stood at the first container and attempted a direct lift and confirmed that physics was, indeed, physics. Then she stopped. She studied the container, the floor, the designated position, the angles available to her. She repositioned. She found a point of leverage against the container's lower edge. She did not lift it. She moved it, transferring kinetic energy through a sequence of repositions, rocking the mass incrementally toward its target. It took her 3 times as long as a Krellian. Every container reached its designated position. Thexol stopped writing the failure log. The failure log was empty. He wrote in the technique file instead. The plasma jets came after cargo. She watched them for 30 seconds, not hesitating, measuring, learning the timing with the patience of someone reading a document they intended to act on. Then she moved through in bursts. One jet caught her shoulder. The armor burned through. She did not slow. The burned armor was still smoking when she hit the partial gravity corridor, and she adjusted her gait in 4 steps, and she went through. 4 hours, 17 minutes, 32 seconds. She came out the far side, and she was on the ground, chest heaving. One shoulder blackened and raw above the ruined fabric. Her eyes were open, aimed upward, and her mouth was moving before she had caught enough breath to speak clearly. "Did I pass?" Not "I'm hurt" or "get the medic" or any of the 12 things he would have expected from a candidate who had just run a Krellian course without an exoskeleton, with a burned shoulder, in a time that placed her in the top 30% of all species ever to attempt it. "Did I pass?" "You completed Phase 1, Thexol said, through the arena communication array. Top 30% of all candidates, regardless of species." She pushed to sitting. Her teeth were set. The shoulder was not a small injury. Not good enough. What's Phase 2? "You require medical attention." "What's Phase 2, Commander?" He looked at her from his pod above the arena floor. She was damaged, spent, and asking for the next thing. Something in the threat model he had been running shifted. He did not have the correct category for the shift. He filed it as anomalous and noted he would need a better category. She came back in 6 hours exactly. Thexol had used the time to review Phase 2 parameters, recalibrate 2 of the drone units whose targeting firmware had drifted since the last session, and write 3 sentences of the technique file before stopping, because he did not yet have the vocabulary for what he was trying to record. She arrived in fresh armor, shoulder newly bandaged, cleared by the medical team with what the attending officer's notes described as obvious reluctance. Candidate declined analgesic protocol, citing preference for full sensory awareness during combat assessment. Thexol read this note twice. He had never seen a candidate decline pain medication before a second phase. He had seen candidates decline it during a phase, which was a different thing entirely and usually indicated either a broken gauge somewhere or the kind of certainty that comes from not yet understanding what the pain was going to be. She stood in front of him in the Phase 2 arena and looked like someone who had slept. The Phase 2 arena was smaller than the obstacle course, 100 meters square, programmable terrain, adjustable lighting, gravity modifiable per sector. 15 combat drones hung dormant in their ceiling cradles, adaptive AI, real battlefield data from 40 years of alliance engagements, progressive lethality escalation built into the sequencing. The first drone was slower, less adaptive. The 15th had tactical processing capacity equivalent to a senior combat officer. The standing record is 11, Thexol said. He did not add held by Sexna. She had read the plaque. Time on record, 27 minutes 51 seconds. Then I know what I'm aiming for, she said. He studied her, then he activated the drone release sequence. When the tone sounds, the exercise begins. She was prone before the tone finished. He had not seen the movement. Between standing and the tone's end, she had crossed 4 meters and dropped flat behind a terrain block, and Drone 1 completed its release sequence and began its first sensor sweep and found nothing where the candidate was supposed to be. It was still processing the absence when she came up on one knee and fired twice. The drone dropped before it had transmitted a single targeting pulse to the system. Thexol noted the time. He opened the technique file. He wrote, "Preemption as instinct, not a tactic, a reflex." She was prone before the stimulus that should have prompted the movement. Drones 2 and 3 released together, standard flanking protocol, designed to prevent the straight-ahead approach that took out Drone 1. They separated, arced wide, came from opposing angles. She did not return fire. She tracked both with no visible urgency, and when they had committed to their trajectories, she stood and ran directly toward them, not away, toward. He nearly terminated the simulation. His hand moved to the control. Then he stopped himself because she was not running without purpose. She was closing distance while firing upward at an oblique angle, and the drone's targeting systems were designed to compensate for lateral movement, not for something that was simultaneously closing and firing upward at a non-combat angle, and both units were still correcting when she went between them and they were down. He sat back. He did not press the control. He wrote in the technique file, uses their programming against them. She knows what they expect. Question, how does she know? 3 down. The next 4 drones were heavy assault models, enhanced shielding, redundant targeting, capable of sustained suppression fire that would pin a Vraxian assault unit in place. Standard approach was to find cover and wait for an opening. This is what the shielding was designed to make necessary. Waiting gave the drones time to establish a kill zone. The kill zone was the point. She charged across open ground. Thexol's hand went back to the termination control. He watched. She was not charging across open ground. She was moving through open ground in a way that used it, and the distinction was everything. She fired at the base of a support pillar as she ran, not at the drones, and the pillar's lower section fractured and dropped a section of partial barrier across her path. And she went behind it and used the momentum to slide under a burst of suppression fire, and came up firing from a position the drones had not modeled as viable, because a viable position required cover and the barrier hadn't existed until she created it. 3 drones down, 4, 5, 6, 7. She was bleeding from a graze across one forearm. She did not stop. His mandible clicked the second time. He looked at the time display. She was inside the standing record on drone count. She was not inside the standing record on time. She was slower than Sexna had been through the first 7, but she had not used any of the approaches Sexna had used, and the approaches Sexna had used were the ones the drones were calibrated against. She was finding new approaches. New approaches took longer at first, and then, as the system adapted to her, they became the base against which the next adaptation was measured. He was watching a live recalibration. The system was learning her. She was learning it faster. Drones 8 through 12 were command coordination models, each one sharing tactical data with the others in real time, so that what one perceived, all perceived. The record holder had reached 11. These 5 were where Sexna's run had ended. They moved as a networked unit, covering each other's fields of fire, presenting no single moment where one could be isolated without exposing the attacker to the others. She disappeared. Not stealth technology. She moved into the maintenance tunnels, the service corridors for the arena's automated repair systems, accessible only from a service hatch near the eastern wall that was not marked on any combat usage schematic. It was on the full facility schematics. The full facility schematics were available to all registered candidates. She had studied them the night before, and he had not thought to wonder what she was studying. The drones lost her signal. They held formation, correct procedure, and swept the visible arena. She was not in the visible arena. She came out behind them. The ninth fell while she was still moving between positions. She was faster than she had been 20 minutes ago. He checked her biometrics. Heart rate elevated but controlled, muscle efficiency not degrading, stress hormone levels rising, but within the range that in human physiology apparently meant something other than what it meant in everyone else's. Her hands were not shaking. Her aim was not drifting. The 10th and 11th went down in sequence. 12 she caught mid-course correction, firing into the gap before its targeting completed the update. 12 drones, new record on count. She had 2 left and 1 power cell. The 13th, 14th, and 15th were command integration units with full tactical learning. They had processed her entire performance, built a model of her approach patterns, and distributed that model to each other so that every adaptation she had used was now anticipated. They spread into optimal formation, covering the maintenance hatch, the service corridors, the terrain positions she had used. They had closed every door she had opened. She ejected her spent cell and slapped in the last replacement. She looked up at the ceiling. The arena's gravity generators were in the ceiling. Their power conduit ran along the eastern wall behind a maintenance panel she had studied the night before. She shot out the panel. 3 seconds of 60% gravity reduction. The drone's ballistic projections were built on standard gravitational constants. They fired where she should be. She launched in a trajectory that only existed in that 3-second window, sailed over their formation in an arc nothing had modeled, and fired in a pattern mid-flight that no standard engagement protocol covered, because no standard engagement protocol had been written for a being who would sacrifice a gravity generator to create a 2-second window above an adaptive AI's firing solution. She landed behind them as the field reasserted. 3 precision shots, 3 central processors, silence. 23 minutes, 47 seconds, 15 drones. She stood in the wreckage and looked up at his pod and saluted from the smoke. Thexol descended. He did not say anything immediately. He crossed the arena floor and stood 3 meters from her, close enough to see the forearm wound, the shoulder still tight under the bandage, the way she was breathing carefully to keep her chest from showing how spent it was. "How did you know about the gravity generator?" he asked. "I studied the schematics. Those are classified." "Classified means difficult to access," she said, "not impossible." He looked at her for a long moment. "You broke the record." "I know. By 4 minutes." She said nothing. She waited, the way she always waited, giving the room time to arrive at the thing she had already decided. "By rights," he said, "the proving ends here. Phase 2 is the final phase." She looked at him. Something in her face stayed entirely flat, but beneath the flatness there was an expectation, not entitled, not angry, just certain. The expression of someone who had run the numbers and knew what came next even before it was said. "There is no phase 3, he said. "Then make one." The chamber was quiet. The wreckage of 15 drones cooled around them. The record plaque above the arena entrance would need to be replaced. He had just thought this, and found it a peculiar thought to be having, and filed it. He looked at her. She was burned, shot, spent, and asking for a thing that did not exist. He pulled up his command interface. "Very well," he said. "Rest, I will arrange it." Omega Squad was briefed at 600 the following morning. Thexol stood at the head of the briefing room and watched them take in the mission parameters. 6 operators, the Alliance's undefeated training unit, with combined service spanning 300 years of active combat across 11 different theaters. Vexura sat in the front, Torquin veteran, 80% of his visible skin in scar tissue, arms crossed, the particular expression of someone who has been told something they find professionally insulting. He waited for the laughter to peak before continuing. "One candidate," Thexol said, "human, 61 kilograms, no augmentation, completed Phase 1 and Phase 2 in sequence, the latter setting a new arena record." He paused. "You will not underestimate her." Vexura leaned forward. One human, Commander. With respect, this seems beneath our capabilities. The words were formal. The tone was the same tone Morvek had used in the council chamber, not cruelty, certainty. I understand, Thexol said. Do not underestimate her. They heard it in his mandibles. The clicks were not happening now. He was under control. But they heard what he was not saying, the same way experienced warriors heard the things officers didn't say, and the room's register shifted, slightly, the way a room shifts when someone who knows something declines to say it fully. Not enough, not yet, but the certainty in their laughter had a hairline fracture in it now. He gave her a preparation window, 15 minutes to study the arena layout, plan her approach, whatever she needed. He routed the brief to her comm. She rejected the window. Her response came back in 4 words, negative, start them now. He read it twice. He sent back, confirm, you are declining 15 minutes of preparation time. Her response, they're expecting me to hide, I'm not hiding, start them now. Thexol stood at his command console. On the screen in front of him, 6 operators taking their insertion positions in the arena below, weapons live, tactical overlay running. On the screen beside it, 1 candidate in a staging corridor, no additional equipment, no tactical overlay, waiting for the signal. He had run this exercise 214 times across 6 years of Omega Squad operations. 214 attempts, 0 defeats. The closest any candidate had come was a 3-person team from a Krellian special unit who had managed to eliminate 1 operator before the squad's coordination overwhelmed them. He was about to run attempt 215. His mandibles were still. He did not know if this was control or if there was simply nothing left to click about, as if his body had processed what it needed to process and arrived somewhere on the far side of the click, in a place without a name yet. He activated the exercise. She came out of the staging corridor, moving toward their insertion point. Not away, toward. Specialist Krell went down in 11 seconds. She had come out of the corridor moving toward the insertion point, and Krell was the point operator, and he was good, genuinely good, 30 years of combat experience sharpened into reflex. He had his weapon raised and his sight line clear before she cleared the corridor mouth. He had done everything right. She was already inside his engagement distance when his weapon finished tracking. A stun grenade at close range, underhand, not thrown, but placed into the gap between his firing arm and his body. 3 nerve strike impacts in the half-second, his reflexes spent processing the grenade. He was unconscious before his enhanced nervous system finished registering the first blow. 11 seconds. Thexol watched from the overhead observation position. His hand rested on the intervention control. He did not press it. The remaining 5 operators heard Krell go down and activated encrypted tactical coordination, a system built on 6 years of operating together, the kind of integration that made 5 individuals function as one. They spread into optimal coverage formation, 2 holding the central corridor, 1 elevated on the eastern support structure, 2 looping wide for a flanking approach. They moved without signals. Every gap was covered. Every angle had a body behind it. She let them set. Thexol watched her on the arena sensors. She had stopped moving. She was standing in partial shadow near a support pillar, not hiding. Her sensor signature was visible to him if not to them, and she was watching the formation take shape with the same focused patience she had used on the plasma jets. Learning the timing, reading the pattern. 20 seconds, 30. She moved. She did not go through the coverage gaps. She went through Operator Zixel and Operator Morax's coordinated firing corridor, the specific angle where their fields of fire overlapped, the zone that should have been the most dangerous place in the arena. She moved through it in a low broken field sprint that kept her inside the zone where Zixel's shot would also hit Morax if either of them fired, and both of them held fire because 6 years of training together had made not hitting your partner as deep a reflex as shooting, and she had put herself inside the one place where their coordination became a constraint. Zixel fell to a sequence she arranged from inside his own blind spot. Morax went down to a ricochet she had planned. She had identified a reflective surface on the arena wall in the 47 seconds she had been standing still, and she maneuvered him into a firing position where his own shot came back. 3 down, 9 minutes. Corporal Thinra, the squad's stealth specialist, rated invisible against all standard detection systems, tried to flank while Vexura and Kitrex consolidated. Thexol tracked him on the overhead sensors, a ghost moving through the arena's dark sectors, closing on her position from behind. She threw a smoke grenade that should not have revealed his position. It did not reveal his position. What it did was heat the air around it enough that the plasma bolt she fired into the cloud bloom triggered off his stealth system's thermal regulation. The system that kept him invisible also kept him cool, and she had changed the thermal signature of the air, and the contrast lit him up for the half-second she needed. Thinra fell. 4 down, 11 minutes. Vexura called the withdrawal and regrouping. His voice was calm, the voice of someone who had survived 11 theaters of combat and knew that surprise in the opening phase did not mean the engagement was lost. He and Kitrex took back-to-back positions against the arena's eastern wall. Maximum situational awareness. Every approach vector covered. 2 of the most experienced operators the Alliance had trained, back-to-back, watching every direction at once. This was the correct response. This was where the math reasserted, where being 2 experienced warriors with full situational awareness should have been enough to stop one small damaged human who had already been shot and burned, and was carrying a forearm wound that was still seeping through the field dressing. She disappeared. 47 seconds. On the overhead sensors, Thexol tracked her. She was moving through the arena's natural shadow patterns, not stealth technology, nothing mechanical, just an understanding of where light fell and where organic vision had limits and where the human eye's peripheral processing lost confidence. She moved in the spaces between Vexura's attention and Kitrex's attention, using the fact that 2 beings covering all approaches still had to blink, still had to process, still had a response lag between seeing and responding. He watched her close the distance in the dark. His mandibles were still, both of them. The 3-click collapse had not happened yet, but something was happening behind it, a pressure building, a recalibration so large his biology hadn't found the sound for it. She was inside their perimeter. Kitrex went down immediately, a close combat sequence applied to the back of his knee and the nerve cluster behind his jaw, so fast that Vexura registered Kitrex falling before he registered she was there. Vexura was fast. He had 80% of his body in scar tissue because he had survived things that should have killed him and the surviving had left marks, and he spun and he landed a glancing blow, the only strike that connected in the entire engagement, a closed fist across her left shoulder, the burned shoulder, and she took it, and she redirected the kinetic energy, and she put him on the ground with a close combat sequence Thexol's tactical library did not have a designation for. Omega Squad eliminated. 19 minutes, 12 seconds. The timer on Thexol's display ran past the number and kept running, and he stopped it manually because it felt wrong to let it run beyond the moment. He looked at the number. He looked at it for 3 full seconds. Then his mandibles clicked 3 times. Successive, involuntary, the full collapse. He had not triple-clicked since his first command. Since a moment 17 years ago when a scenario had exceeded every model he had for it, and his body had processed what his mind was still catching up to. He had thought then that he understood what the 3-click meant. He was revising that understanding now. Medical teams pushed past him as he descended to the arena floor. They fanned out to the fallen operators with the practice speed of people who had run post-exercise evaluations many times. Vexura was already conscious. The blow had put him down, not out, and his first word was something in Torquin dialect that the translation matrix rendered as an expression of profound professional reassessment. Kitrex was helped to sitting. The others stirred. No one was dead. No one would require reconstruction. She was trying to stand at attention. She was not fully succeeding. The shoulder had taken the blow, and the blow had landed on top of 6 hours of obstacle course and the drone simulation and the engagement, and her body was making its accounting known. She settled for a less formal posture and looked at him. "Did I prove it?" He said, "You need medical evaluation." "In a moment, Commander," she waited, the same quality of waiting she had shown in the council chamber, not impatience, not defiance, certainty that the answer was coming and willingness to stay until it arrived. "Did I prove it?" He stopped 2 meters from her. He considered the question, not its answer, which was not in doubt, but the right shape for the answer, because it mattered. "You proved something," he said, "though I am not certain it is what you intended." She waited. "You proved that individual capability is not determined solely by biology, technology, or heritage." He paused. "You also proved that humans may be the most terrifying warriors this galaxy has ever encountered." She looked at him. "Is that a compliment?" "It is a statement of fact. You pulled every strike on Vexura." She had accepted the medical team's attention. By then, one of them was working on the shoulder while she stood still for it, which was the most cooperative Thexol had seen her behave with anyone's assistance. She looked at him when he said it. "He landed one. You could have prevented it. You chose not to." She did not deny it. He needed to feel like it was a real fight. The medical officer glanced up at this. Thexol noted the glance and filed it. "How much were you holding back?" he asked. She thought about it, not performing the thought, actually considering, the way you considered a technical question that required precision. "Enough," she said. He stood for a moment. Then he pulled up his command interface. He opened her intake file, the full file, not the brief he had reviewed on intake day. He had a specific reason now. He scrolled to the biosphere classification field. He found the redaction flag he had noted and dismissed a day and a half ago. He opened it. The field that populated was not Class 2. It was not Class 3. Earth Biosphere Classification, Class 9. He read it twice. He looked at the qualifier field beneath it, reclassified upward, prior entry Class 2 estimated, pre-contact survey, current, Class 9, confirmed post-contact ecological assessment. Note, prior intake files generated before reclassification may carry unverified Class 2 entry. Apply separate protocol. The proving's entire calibration structure was built against the upper range of catalogued species performance. Class 9 was not in the catalog's upper range. Class 9 was 4 tiers above anything the Alliance had produced in a training scenario. Class 9 was the designation for worlds where the biosphere itself was a threat, where every organism that had survived to sentience had done so against a selection pressure that the Alliance's most lethal species had never encountered. He had run a Class 9 organism through a course built for a Class 2. She had completed it, she had set records in it, she had held back. The medical officer had stopped working. Thexol did not notice immediately. He was looking at the screen. He was looking at the gap between what his intake file had said and what was actually true, and at the 17 species he had trained, and the 214 times he had run Omega Squad, and all the calibrations he had built on the assumption that the ceiling of a species was knowable from the data in its file. And at the woman standing in front of him with a burned shoulder who had asked, "Did I pass?" before accepting medical attention, and had answered enough when he asked her how much she had been holding back. She was watching him read. "You knew," he said. "I knew the classification," she said. "I didn't know what was in your file." His mandibles were still. He closed the intake screen. He looked at her and at the arena around them, the drones in pieces, the Omega Squad operators being helped by medics, the record numbers on the display that would both need replacing, and something in his threat model did not so much break as stop existing, the way a building does not fall but simply ceases to be load-bearing. The first cohort of human recruits was scheduled to arrive in 3 cycles. He had been told there would be 100 of them. He thought about the intake files that were already being prepared for those 100 candidates, and the biosphere classification that would be in each one, and what it meant that he had not known to look. That loop did not close, it stayed open, pressing. He closed the interface. "Medical clearance first," he said, "then we talk about what comes next." She nodded. She turned back to the medical officer. On her way, she picked something up from the arena floor without pausing, the processing core of Drone 11, which had come loose from the unit's casing when it fell. She turned it once in her hand, set it on a nearby equipment ledge, and let the medical officer finish the shoulder. She did not explain why she picked it up. She did not look at it again. Thexol looked at it. He made a note in the technique file, which was no longer a technique file in any useful sense. He wrote, "Core 11th Unit, do not discard." He filed the Warrior Cast recommendation that evening. He wrote it with the specific language that made it impossible to quietly reassign to committee: full inclusion, not auxiliary classification, full combat specialist eligibility, with immediate advanced placement consideration. He named her performance in each phase without editorializing. He named the classification discrepancy. He named the number of attempts Omega Squad had seen before this one and the outcome of each. He filed it through the formal channel and copied the 7 seats of the Alliance Council. Then he sat at his desk and looked at his coffee, or the Vraxian equivalent, a dark liquid that served the same function, and he poured a second cup he did not drink. He straightened the intake stylus on his desk. He looked at the window. He thought about the technique file that had started as a failure log. He thought about the maintenance beam he had forgotten existed. He thought about the word classified and what it actually meant when said to someone who had decided that difficult to access and impossible were not the same thing. His command console chimed. Morvek's hologram filled the center of the room before Thexol had fully turned in his chair. "Commander," the Chancellor's 4 eyes blinked in their amused sequence, though the amusement was now the considered kind rather than the reflexive kind. "The Council has reviewed your recommendation." "And?" "The Council is divided." Morvek spread his hands. "Many of my colleagues remain concerned. Humans are recently discovered, structurally fragile, culturally inexperienced. One exceptional candidate does not rewrite the species assessment." Thexol thought about the redaction flag he had not opened. He thought about 214 exercises and one outcome that had not existed before today. He thought about a woman who had declined a preparation window and walked toward the thing everyone expected her to run from. "With respect, Chancellor," he said, "the Council is wrong." Morvek regarded him. "You sound certain." "I am certain. I have seen what humans can accomplish when the instruments used to measure them were not built for what they are." He kept his voice even. "The proving is calibrated to known ceilings. Earth's ceiling has not been measured. What happened in that arena today was not the upper limit. It was a demonstration of the lower one." The Chancellor was silent. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, slowly, which on a Vraxian face was not amusement, but processing. "Very well," Morvek said, finally. "The recommendation stands, but you are now personally responsible for their training, their development, their success or failure before the Alliance." He paused. "All of them." "I accept," Thexol said. The hologram dissolved. He stood at his window for a moment. The station's external ports showed stars, the same stars they always showed, the same distances, the same ancient light. Nothing out there had changed. Only what he understood about what was out there, moving through it. He drafted the directive before he went to his quarters. Human Trial Protocol, separate parameters, ref, VOSS, K do not apply standard fragility curve. He sent it to the Proving's administrative office and copied it to every training master on Korvax. He sent a second note to the record office. The plaque above Arena Theta required replacement. The new entry would read VOSS, K15, 23M47S below it, a secondary line that had not existed in the plaque's format before. Omega Squad, elapsed, 19M12S. He did not know what field to put the second line in. He created a new field and put it there anyway. 3 cycles later, the first human cohort arrived. 100 of them came through the receiving bay in an uneven line, not a military formation, not yet, more like a group of people who had decided at roughly the same moment to walk in the same direction. Varied builds, varied ages. Career military among them, but also others. A structural engineer from a station on the outer rim, a marine biologist, a teacher, a woman from a region of Earth called the Punjab who had spent 20 years in agricultural work and had the specific kind of physical competence that came from 20 years of tasks that needed doing whether you wanted to do them or not. They carried their bags with the same mix of hope and uncertainty that Thexol had spent a career reading in candidate arrivals, and they looked at the station with wide eyes, and some of them looked afraid. All of them had shown up anyway. He watched them form rough ranks from the observation platform above the receiving bay. He was aware of Cale Voss standing beside him, training liaison officer, as of this morning, a designation he had created when he realized that no existing role covered what she was about to do. She was watching her species arrive with an expression that was not triumph. It was something quieter, the expression of someone who understood exactly what they had just signed the others up for. "What do you think, Commander?" she said. "I think the galaxy has underestimated humanity for the last time." "Good answer," she nodded toward the cohort, ready to train the next generation. "The question, Lieutenant, is whether the next generation is ready for what training with the Alliance truly requires." She looked at the recruits. The engineer was helping someone else adjust their gear. The teacher was studying the station's layout, her head moving the way Cale's had moved the first day in Complex 9, reading the space, filing what she found. "Commander," Cale said, "these are humans, we're never ready, but we show up anyway and we figure it out as we go. That's kind of our specialty." He watched them. They looked impossibly fragile. They looked exactly the way she had looked standing before the Council of Seven while the most powerful beings in the Alliance laughed. He returned to his office when the intake processing began. On his desk, the drone processing core from Phase 2, small, slightly scorched around the sensor ring where the gravity field had reasserted while it was still active. He had carried it from the equipment ledge in the arena 3 cycles ago without planning to. The technique file he had opened as a failure log and then as an analysis document was open on his terminal, and it was neither of those things now. He scrolled past 17 entries: the first wall, the maintenance beam, the cargo repositioning, the oblique firing angle, the tunnel emergence, the mid-flight trajectory that the drones could not have modeled, and he reached the end of the document. He opened a new entry. He set the processing core on the shelf above the terminal. He typed the field. "Proof filed cycle 3, station Corvax. Do not reclassify." He closed the terminal. The station's intake systems were already processing the 100 new files. Each one had a biosphere classification field. Each one read, Class 9, apply separate protocol, Ref, Vos K. He looked at the core on the shelf. It was ordinary in size. It was scorched. It sat between a tactical almanac and a years-old appointment record, and it did not look like anything in particular. The galaxy had calibrated its fear to every species it had already broken. It had not yet met humanity.